So we're going to continue the conversation about change. Michael Moore is going to come join me up here on stage. And I'm not going to do a big introduction about Michael, because I promised you I wouldn't. But I will tell you that one of the things that I really have loved about working with the Hoaloha businesses is that they are trying to do the same thing we're trying to do at Zingerman, which is create a culture where employees really enjoy coming to work and have an opportunity to bring their best selves to work every day. And I find that really inspiring. Welcome to the stage.
Yeah, thanks.
So, this is fun. So, Zingerman's is a community of businesses. You call your organization a hui of businesses, right? But we started as just the deli and then grew. You started as Old Lahaina Luau and grew. When you started, did you think you were going to have a whole community of businesses?
No, not at all. When we started, we're in our 31st year now, sorry. And
time goes quickly.
That's right. We all had other jobs. I was working for an ocean recreation company, and I heard through the grapevine that somebody had approached our boss to do a luau at 505 Front Street, who had just come out of bankruptcy. And I asked my boss for the bartending job because I thought bartending at a luau is pretty easy. It's just Mai Tais, so it'd be a good part-time job. And he actually said, well, we weren't going to do that, but if you want to be involved with that, maybe we can make that work. And my partner Tim knew Robert, who had a hula background, so we got together and started this we all had other jobs, part-time jobs, and kind of started growing from there.
Yeah. So,
can I do a little disclaimer first? Because I know a lot of people out there, some people very well. So in our organization, this is what we call grandpa stories. So indulge me if you've heard all these stories before.
But when you started with just that, but why did the other businesses, so I mean now there was Old Lahaina Luau, and then Aloha Mixed Plate was next, right? And then Feast of Lele, your cousin, Star Noodle, Leota's, and then the farms, right? So
correct. Yeah. Well, we actually ran the business for the company we were working for. Tim was actually working in accounting. We got Rob, and so we were running, and we were loving it. We really felt the energy from our guests, and but we weren't making money. Those of you in food and beverage know 6 months to a year is not a lot of time to show a profit in that kind of business. But it wasn't going to work for that particular company at that particular time. And so they were going to close it, but we were loving it so much. Not probably thinking in terms of a career of doing this, but we were having fun. And we were 3 days a week. We had no liquor license, no kitchen. It was pretty much just having a party in a backyard. But then a few years, we went, this is kind of a really good example for visioning, because we went in and told our boss, like, well, we want to buy it. And he kind of laughed at us and said, you guys need to go home and sharpen your pencils. Because we really didn't have this kind of training. None of the three of us had any formal business education or training. We just loved what we were doing.
Right.
And so we did go sharpen our pencils, and in our version of doing a vision of what success looked like, we went back and we made a pretty extraordinary deal for people who were literally diving for quarters in the car to fill up the tank. At that time, we made a pretty good deal, and we made the deal, we got the business. We were still just sort of doing other jobs, and a little while later, a restaurant at 505 became available. That got our kitchen and our liquor license, and all of a sudden we had to be grown-ups and do a real business.
Right, right. The drive, but there have been a lot of changes in the organization over the years. And I know that one of the reasons that Zingerman's grew beyond the deli was Ari and Paul's desire to create opportunity for people in the organization because they wanted people to stay. And my sense is that that also was a real driving force for the Hoaloha businesses, right?
I think absolutely. As we started to grow and our crowds got bigger, and then people stayed with you. You realized you're celebrating your 10th anniversary, and people were still with you. You feel like you needed to. We had great opportunities presented to us, so you were sort of driven to create opportunities for other people. So that's how things really started to grow.
Yeah. So it's been about 7 years since you and Tim came to your first Zing Train seminar in Ann Arbor. That was spring of 2010. And so my staff come in and they go, it's a week before the seminar. 2 people from Hawaii just signed up. We were so excited. No one had ever come from Hawaii before. And no one comes from that far away that signing up that close to the event. So how did you hear about us?
Well, I am a huge fan of Zingerman's, and I'd send, they do this great mail order business, and they have a Reuben in a box, which is this really cool gift to give. Somebody clapped. Somebody also send that. And so I was looking through their catalog, having coffee with partner Tim, and I said, oh, wow, do you realize that Zingerman's does food travel? They go food tours, and looking through the catalog, oh my gosh, they do leadership training and management training. And it really clicked for us that we did a lot of leadership training and for Disney, with all sorts of organizations. But here was a group that was so similar to us in that they had a group of small businesses. They had this philosophy, as you heard their employees talk about employee engagement and community service, and so much commonality. And also they were a food service business. So we thought a group like this that has so much commonality and has our values and also does what we do seemed like a really good fit for us. So it was about a week, or we disagree if it was a week or 2 weeks.
He thinks it was 2 weeks, but whatever.
But
you can win on that if you want.
We were we were chilly in Ann Arbor, going to our first Zingerman's experience, and September of that year, Maggie and Ari, 2 of my heroes, came to Maui.
Yeah. So what was your organization going through at that time that was really drawing you to more leadership training? I think it was just the growth, because the first time we came was right before, Star had opened recently and Leota's was in the works. Right?
Correct. We had gone from sort of the luau and Aloha Mixed Play, just sort of this little local business, and very, very small, and things started happening pretty quickly with the growth. I remember our director of sales at the time. I was going up to say a holiday greeting, and she tugged on my shirt as I went before the employees and said, you have to introduce yourself because some people don't know who you are. It was really devastating as our company had grown that we were at that point. And so we were really searching for ways that we could stay on Ohana, stay close to each other. And also, as you grow, you can have all these great ideas, but you have to have leadership in place. The 3 of us couldn't be everywhere that we needed to be if we were going to create these opportunities. So really, meeting Zingerman's for us was that point in time where everything sort of shifted to leadership development and less for us to daily operations.
Right. So one of the things that I know is has been a challenge for us, and I should step back and say, we actually are Zingerman's is 10 businesses now since the video is done, and we have about 700 employees total, but from small businesses that have like 5 to the bigger businesses that have a few hundred. And one of the challenges that we have, and we've talked about this a lot, is how do you get people to step up and take more responsibility? So it's one thing, a lot of times, you talk about empowering employees to make decisions or to give input. But we actually talk about expecting them to do that, because you can empower them, but they actually have to step up and do it. And that can be hard, because I think a lot of people's idea of work is, I'll come and I'm happy to do what you tell me, but my job isn't to make decisions. That's the boss's job. And so that's something I've seen you actively been working on, and Bottom Line Change is one of the tools that you've used to get people feeling more comfortable stepping up.
Yeah, we were joking the other day that when Maggie asked that question about do people like change, and everybody throws up their hands, I really don't believe you. Because I've been doing this for a while, and I really feel people want to want change, but I think there's a lot of fear, and I also don't know if everybody's comfortable. I am someone that I can honestly say I love to break things and put them back together and make them better. So to me, it's a thrilling kind of thing. But I think it is a challenge. I think I'm not sure if this, I hope this doesn't offend anyone, but I really, we work a lot with senior citizens on the West Side, and I see the sort of passing of a generation, of a plantation era generation, that really depended on someone else. If their road was closed, the plantation fixed the road. If some, you were always sort of counting on someone. And we're only really a couple generations away from that on Maui. So I think that's still there, especially in a business like ours that has so many, locally born people working for us. That I think that's kind of still there. And I think it's a real challenge to get people to, you want to empower them, say, no, you can decide on that, when someone's sort of counting on that guidance. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
And I think, Michigan doesn't, I don't think there were plantations in Michigan, so but we still have that idea that a lot of jobs that people have had before they came to Zingerman's, they weren't asked for their opinion. And if they gave it, or they tried to make, suggestions, they kind of got pushed down. So we have that same thing of trying to help people. And so in our experience, having a tool like Bottom Line Change gives people a system to use. And it's been really fun working with teaching again the Bottom Line Change to your leadership team, because there's been turnover since I was here last, and hearing how it's being used, hearing people being reminded, oh yeah, we could do that better. That sort of thing.
I'm a huge fan of Zingerman's, obviously, and if you ever get a chance to go there, it's pretty amazing. I'll tell you a quick story of my first visit to the deli. I had a great meal. I was leaving, and there were some folks out on the curb, and I overheard one woman saying, "Oh, it was kind of expensive, wasn't it?" And two of the other women just spoke up immediately and said, that's because they use the best quality ingredients, they're paying their employees well. I said, well, that is success, because they're not having to put their message out there, their customers are doing it for them. So that was huge to me. But sorry, I lost the question because I told my story.
That's okay, you just talk. Okay, I'll ask you another, I'll get you back on track here. So, Bottom Line Change, which we're talking about change here, it's a way to systematically get more people engaged in what's going on. So maybe you can give a specific example of where you used it, like at the luau.
So where I was going with that actually was, so Zingerman's, when we go to visit them, we love what they do, and they do amazing work and a great operation. And I tell our employees who have gone there and who have worked with Maggie and Ari and their teams that we also do amazing things, and I'm really proud of everything our company has done. But what we see at Zingerman's, and the reason we keep reconnecting with Zingerman's, is they have these systems, they have these formulas that make it easier. And as you listen to Maggie, I think that sounds heavy. That sounds like a lot of work to make change. But really, a lot of Zingerman's things are sort of front-loaded. You do some work at the beginning, you create these systems, you create these formulas, you make them part of the rhythm of your work life, and then everything is much faster and more efficient. So we have a couple examples, And I think it's important to see that when our workshops, that 2 of the examples of change from our staff was adding a butter knife to the luau table. That was a major change for them. And I was very curious about that one, but we've had things like that. One of the ways BLC has worked for us on kind of a small thing was the order that the guests are taking up to the buffet at the luau. It sounds like a really simple thing, but sort of my vision, I wasn't involved with this actual change process, but I was involved with the vision for what success looked like, and that was happy guests who were fed quickly and timely and all had a good view of the show. And what would happen was, like, there was this sense that the people who had the best seats in the front should eat last because they have the best seats, even though we don't believe we have any bad seats, of course. But what that did, in my mind, when I'd go to visit, is those people in the front eating last, that's when the show is about to start, in fact, sometimes does start, and they're still finishing. Their dishes are being bussed and their last round of drinks or whatever. So it was really, to me, it was not a good way to begin the show. And so they went through a lot. Now we have a little bit of a convoluted formula for where we start and where we end in terms of just getting guests to the buffet. So that was an example of one that worked well for us.
Can I just jump in on that while we're talking about that? Because what I thought, why I think that's a great example is that, so you had a vision of what success would look like and some compelling reasons for why you wanted the change. But the actual implementation was done by the people who were, with input from the people that, the luau management, the servers, the bussers, all of the people that needed to make it happen actually came up with the solution that met the vision. Absolutely. Right? So,
correct.
Yeah.
And
No, if you have more to say, you go. My job is to get you talking. So the more you talk, the easier my job is.
So on a bigger scale, we have, for a lot of our history, have been one corporation, one company that had these different divisions. So a few years back, we realized there was problems with that. As we opened restaurants that were disconnected, we had one liquor liability issue and lots of things like that. And so it really became important for us to break up the company into individual LLCs. That was a major change and required a lot of the kind of work that you heard Maggie talk about. And I think we did pretty good. I don't think we did great. One thing about spending time with Maggie is this constant, it's a really good reminder to me of how I could be using this more, even on small decisions and personal decisions. I really never thought, I love that you talked about Gowrie, who I also love, and I never thought about an employee leaving as a change per se, even though obviously it is, but to use these kind of formulas and recipes for something like that, or for just a change that's in your mind. And again, you could be the only one going through all these processes of who needs to know and when, could be just you, so.
Yeah, I really love the term you used, and so I'm learning from you too, the idea of building these things into the rhythm of your work. And it is, I think, bottom line change at Zingerman's has become internalized. And there are times when it's a significant change and we are physically documenting the compelling reasons and the vision and getting a microcosm together. But even on small things, people tend to share compelling reasons and talk about their vision of success. And it has also become a way that we teach an internal class on bottom line change and ask, anyone can go, and it's become a way that if employees want to suggest improvements, rather than sort of the old way, which was they come to their manager and they just say, these things are wrong and you should fix them. Now we can say, wow, those sound like some strong, compelling reasons, can you write a vision of what it would look like if it were working well? And if you bring that back, then we have something to sit down and start talking about. Now, that doesn't mean that the employee who is suggesting that change automatically gets to decide. That's why step 2 includes get leadership agreement on that. But I have to tell you that if someone at Sing Train comes to me with a vision, some compelling reasons and a vision for change, and it makes sense to me, I want to sit and work with them and see, what we can do with that. And if the reasons aren't compelling to me, it's still an opportunity for a really good discussion. And I know that I've got an employee who's pretty engaged in the organization, and there's positives come out of that. Yeah. What else did you want to tell people? I'm just...
Well, kind of on the subject of change, I think I was speaking earlier about if one of your values as an organization is continuous improvement, which pretty much has to go with the territory if you're a small business, then change is obviously part of that. And so, as Maggie talks about, embracing it and loving it and making it part of the rhythm of your work, that's kind of where we have to be. Again, I was talking earlier about excellence is kind of the price of entry now. You with social media giving you, everybody rating you, and if there was an interesting study in San Francisco with the rising of the minimum wage there, that restaurants that survived were the ones with the best Yelp reviews, which, it shows that unfortunately, or whatever, if your customers really like you, then you can survive those kind of obstacles, like increase on your cost of doing business. So.
Now, one of the things that I talked about in the keynote was that sometimes bottom line change involves the leader acknowledging that we don't have all the answers, and that there's a lot to learn from gathering insights from around the organization, different perspectives. And I'm just wondering, as a company founder, have you found it difficult to do that, to admit that you don't have all the answers?
There's some employees out there, so.
He really does have all the answers. He's just not telling you.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course. Then you also, that's a hard question, because I think through most of my career, I felt an obligation to have the answers. I felt this expectation that, the three of us are supposed to know what we're supposed to do. And that's a hard place to find yourself when you're really wanting to get the expertise of all the people that you're fortunate to work with, and all their, manao and their skills, and yet sort of looking to you for those answers. A lot of people have heard me talk about this whole, through my career, the whole idea of course correction, which is change. When something isn't right in your organization, when you just feel like, oh no, we made a mistake there, or that we need to fix that. And I remember early on, I had a conversation with one of our leadership people, and a serious conversation about an issue, a problem, I guess. And the next day, someone came up to me and said, oh, I heard so-and-so got major scoldings from you. And I'm like, oh man, that was not supposed to be scoldings. That was supposed to be my way of trying to right the ship in the right direction. So it never ceases to be a challenge for me personally.
Yeah. So another thing people often worry about is that bottom line change means that as leaders, we're giving up our authority to make the decisions. So I kind of like to address that, because I think in your organization, as in ours, most decisions, sometimes there are command decisions that the leader we're going to do this. I think bottom line change is still a really effective tool to roll out that change and to get people involved. So you can have made a command decision, but if you share your compelling reasons and a vision and get people involved in creating the action plan, you get them more on board. Most decisions in our organization are what I would call consultative, where a manager or a leadership team is ultimately responsible for the decision, but we actively solicit input from other people as we're trying to figure out what to do. And that's my sense is that that's true for you as well.
Yeah, I would put us in the same category. And I think that part of working with Zingerman's through the years is it's tough because as you're going through this and you hear these words vision and BLC and servant leadership and a lot of concepts that we have learned from Zingerman's, they're all pieces to this puzzle that different kinds of decision making, command, consultative,
right.
all those things. So it's all kind of part of the puzzle that you keep adding to your toolbox.
Yeah, and I think for us, they're all built on, trying to give employees and managers and owners some tools or roadmaps that when you're under stress, which we are under stress in small business often, and change can cause stress, that you can remember that you have these tools to go back to and kind of use as a centering point. And that when, like any tools or skills, bottom line change is something that you can learn, and the more you practice it, the better you get at it. And one of the things I loved about working with your teams in the last couple of days was talking about some of the past changes and, getting people to sort of self-analyze what could have gone better if, if they were doing it again, what would they do differently? I know we want to have time for audience questions. There are no questions on my pad, but perhaps you have some there, Frank. Yes, you do. Excellent. Mine just says questions.
Okay.
Well, I have to make it bigger so that I can read it. What was the biggest change you had to make in your business, and how did it affect your business? They're all for you.
I think the breaking up of the one big business into small businesses was very challenging. It's interesting for some, for a lot of the people in our organization, that just meant a different name on their check. But for most of the leadership, this was a big change. How product got distributed within our organization, how leadership was organized. It really required a whole different organizational structure. So that was challenging. I still think, we just heard the other day from accounting that they are still feeling it. It's been
right.
years. Yeah.
I think that is an important point, is that any kind of change takes time. And the bigger the change, and the stronger your organizational culture, the more time it's going to take. So that's been about 5 years. And they're still, like in accounting, they still are seeing some remnants of it. But I think anyone who's joined the organization in the last 2 years, it's like this is just the way it is, right?
Completely. And you heard, I love that you said joy, because we heard from accounting yesterday that was also their biggest change and challenge, I guess. And yet she was pretty joyful at the end. She was like, but we're
Yeah.
all feeling really good about it now. So
Right.
yeah. One thing I will say, I'm glad you said the time thing, because one thing to accept is that it takes time. We're all small business people, so we want to be nimble and we want to make decisions fast and we want to be able to, react. And yet, to accept that change takes time, especially when you're talking about organizational structure, procedures and those kind of things. You just kind of got to accept it. Maggie mentioned really briefly the Zingerman's 12 Natural Laws of Business. Google it. I pass these out about once a year to all leadership. They're great. They're 12 things that you can remind yourself every day about. Really good stuff.
A couple other questions here. This one is, how do you measure successful change? And I can speak for us, and then you can. So at Zingerman's, we actually measure our success on 3 bottom lines: food quality, service quality, and financial results. So for us, a successful change is one that has a positive impact on one or more of those bottom lines. And depending on what the change is, we would want to have the measures in place of, what are we trying to improve? And then the other piece of successful change is the change that sticks, something that lasts. Yeah. Would you add to that, or?
I think I'll just add to it by saying it's something we should really work on more. That we measuring success, and we ask this a lot as we move away and become, as leaders, the 3 of us, into more consultative, advisory kind of role. We are constantly asking, okay, that sounds great. How are we going to know that it was successful? And that's not an easy answer. That's not an easy thing. We're still struggling with that.
Yeah. Michael, this one's specifically for you. How did you assemble your initial leadership team, and is it still growing?
Yeah. Wow, how did we assemble them? I think we have been really fortunate to have attracted like-minded people, and I don't know what it is, our culture, our role in the community. We've been able to attract really good people. We've lost lots of wonderful people that have moved on to other things, and yet we do this great 20th anniversary luncheon for people who have been 20 years, and this last round for this year, there's like 9 people or something that have worked for us for 20 years. So that is an amazing feeling. The other thing that's amazing, the 3 of us teach a class once a month or so to all the new employees. So it really isn't about their job, it's about walking into our company and telling about the kind of company that we want to have, our vision, mission, our guiding principles. And a recent class a few months ago had 5 people who had direct family members working for us, mothers, sisters. That is an amazing feeling. So I'm not sure what we do specifically except try to do good.
Cool. I think we have time for one more. And I bet a lot of people wanted to ask this one. What if your leadership is not open to change, or they don't see the need? They don't identify or see the need. So how do you get people on board? Yeah. You want me to start? Sure. Well, that's a challenge, right? But part of it is documenting compelling reasons. And when we talk about compelling reasons, they need to be compelling, not just, so for Zing Train, not just compelling to me as the owner or partner, but also what would be compelling to the other people in the organization. And sometimes, for some changes, it's, these are changes we need to make to stay in business. Sometimes they're changes we need to make to get us towards our long-term vision. But if you're talking about really significant organizational changes, sometimes there are things that people don't get on board with. And that's one of the jobs that's where it comes down to. If you are the owner, sometimes it's your decision, and sometimes people leave, which is a change, and then there are new opportunities. But I think a lot of times we expect people to be against the change, or they are against it just sort of out of habit. And that if we do a better job of really explaining why and having a dialogue, they're much more likely to get on board, my experience. Yeah.
I think that's it. I really respond a lot to the compelling reasons. We've all been in that situation where a leader or even a line employee will say, oh yeah, I made lots of suggestions and nobody listens to them anyway, so I just gave up. But and then you might scratch your head and go, I didn't hear about any of those. Where were they presented? And so that's where it becomes, I think these tools, the compelling reason, having a strategic vision, an inspiring vision, I think those are the ways you can get leadership on board. But without those tools, it is hard because it's just you kind of preaching. But if you said, oh, here, I went through this process, here's my compelling reasons why we should do this, and anyone, okay, I'll wrap it up. Anyway,
Yeah.
Zingerman's and us always end with appreciation, so I just want to appreciate Maggie for being here, and I appreciate everyone for inviting me to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate this opportunity to work with one of my favorite clients and to be here today. Thank you all very much.
Let's thank Maggie and Michael. Thank you very much.